You see, the trouble with most people is that they spend their entire lives anxiously trying not to fall apart. They claw at routines, titles, relationships, and belief systems as if these things are the very fabric holding them together. Like a desperate swimmer clinging to driftwood in stormy waters, we've been taught to believe that structure equals survival, and so we build elaborate towers of identity, hoping they'll shield us from the chaos of existence. But those towers, those carefully crafted personas, roles, and routines, are often prisons in disguise. What if I told you that the greatest freedom, the most profound kind of liberation, arises not from keeping it all intact, but from the moment it all disintegrates? When the job vanishes, the lover leaves, the ideology crumbles, when the floor falls away and there's no more scaffolding left to cling to, that's when something incredible happens. That's when you find, often to your astonishment, that you don't sink. You float, not because you're holding on, but because you've let go. We've been conditioned from childhood, trained with rewards and punishments like Pavlov's dogs, to prioritize stability, control, and predictability. We're told to map out our lives like city planners, career by 30, house by 35, retire by 60, but life isn't a city grid, it's a river. It meanders, it floods, it dries up, it forges new paths through stone and soil. And yet, in our fear, to dam it up, to force it into static form, to make something flowing behave like something fixed, we try to choreograph the cosmic dance, to capture its rhythm in a rule book. But that's the tragedy of man. He wants the eternal motion of life to stop just long enough for him to master it. He wants to memorize the steps of a dance that never stops changing. But life isn't interested in your choreography. It flows, it swirls, it stumbles forward in its wildness, and in trying to stop it, we miss it entirely. To let everything fall apart is not some act of self-sabotage or nihilism. It is, paradoxically, the deepest form of trust. It's saying to life, I no longer demand guarantees, I surrender. In that surrender, the ego, the fragile, hyper-vigilant narrator in your mind, finally drops the script. It stops performing, stops pretending. And what you're left with is not destruction, but revelation. What crumbles isn't your essence. What disintegrates isn't your soul. It's the mask you wore, the posture you adopted, the identity you clung to for safety. Underneath the wreckage lies something far more real, who you were before the world told you who to be. That still, spacious presence, that unspeakable awareness. That's who you are. Consider a leaf on a tree. During spring and summer it flourishes, vibrant, green, alive. It soaks in the sunlight, dances in the wind, plays its part in the grand ecological symphony. But then comes autumn. The air cools. The days shorten, and the leaf, sensing the shift, does not panic, it doesn't cling, it releases, it lets go, not with sorrow but with grace. It falls not as a failure but as a fulfillment of its nature. In that falling it begins a new journey. It returns to the earth, decomposes, feeds the soil, and becomes part of something new. Why then, when the seasons of our lives change, do we resist with such ferocity? Why do we fight the natural winds of transition, clinging desperately to what was when life is clearly asking us to evolve? What causes most human suffering is not the event itself, but our resistance to it. Pain, loss, change, these are inevitable. But the suffering? That's optional. That comes from the refusal to feel, to release, to flow. It's like clenching your fists. Try it now, tighter still. Notice the tension, the pressure, the discomfort. Now release. Feel that softening, that opening. That right there is the essence of surrender. We walk through life clenching our emotions, our ambitions, our past, our future fears. And then we wonder why we're tired, why we're aching. The pain is in the grip. And the peace, the real peace, lies in the letting go. There's a sacred kind of wisdom hidden inside every breakdown. When the structures you relied on begin to crack, when the old roles no longer fit, when your carefully arranged life begins to unravel, it can feel terrifying. But that terror hides a rare opportunity, the chance to meet yourself without the armor, to stand stripped of illusion before the mirror of truth. It's what I call spiritual nudity, raw, unguarded, and real. It's uncomfortable, no doubt. It exposes all the places you tried to hide, but it's also deeply honest. And in that honesty, there is liberation, because now, finally, there's nothing left to protect, nothing left to perform, just the truth of who you are, unadorned and unashamed. Now let me be clear. I'm not saying you should go out and actively destroy your life. This isn't an ode to chaos for its own sake. I'm not romanticizing pain. What I am saying is that when life does tear down your illusions, when the fire comes uninvited, don't flee from it, don't douse it with denial, sit with it, let the fire do its work, because fire, though fierce, is also purifying. It burns away the unnecessary, the inessential, the false. What's left in the quiet of the aftermath is something fierce and clean. In the ashes you may find clarity. In the embers, a new beginning. Life ends and life begins, again and again. We live in a culture that fears death in all its forms, not just literal death, but symbolic death, aging, endings, stillness. We cover our wrinkles with creams, we medicate our sadness with pills, we drown our silence in noise. But the great spiritual traditions, Buddhism, Taoism, mystical Christianity, they understood what we have forgotten, that death is not the enemy, it is the gateway, the teacher, the turning point. Every ending contains a seed, a whisper of the beginning that follows. Just as night gives way to dawn, just as winter yields to spring, so too do our personal deaths, of identity, of ego, of certainty, make space for something new to bloom. The Tao Te Ching says, "To be whole, let yourself break apart." These are not just poetic words to be admired and forgotten. This is deep spiritual advice, practical, lived-tested. Wholeness isn't about being flawless, uncracked, pristine. It's about being real, which sometimes means being shattered. When you allow yourself to break, you are no longer ruled by the fear of breaking. You become vast, flexible, unshakable, not because nothing touches you, but because everything passes through you. You are no longer the rigid dam, you are the river, and the river is free. Think of the caterpillar. From the outside, its transformation into a butterfly seems like a beautiful miracle. But step inside that cocoon, and you'll see something far more intense. The caterpillar doesn't just grow wings, it dissolves. It literally digests itself. Its body turns to liquid, total breakdown, chaos. But that chaos is the prelude to something stunning. The butterfly isn't born by accident, it's born by surrender, by the willingness to be undone. That's the real lesson of metamorphosis. Transformation demands dissolution. And so it is with us. If you want to fly, you have to be willing to melt. And so many people, tragically, are terrified of becoming nothing. They think that if they lose their job, their relationship, their identity, their plans, they will disappear. But the truth is, you are nothing, not in a bleak or nihilistic way, but in the Buddhist sense of sunyata, emptiness, spaciousness. You are not a fixed object, you are an open sky, a canvas, a vessel. Emptiness doesn't mean you're void of meaning, it means you're free from the illusion of permanence. It means life can flow through you, not get stuck inside you. And on that empty canvas, life paints its wildest, most beautiful masterpieces. We must come to understand deep in our bones that to fall apart is not to cease to exist. It is not an ending, but a revelation. When the structure collapses, when the persona fractures and the scaffolding of identity buckles under the weight of life, it is not death. It is the beginning of truth. The self you've spent so many years curating, the high achiever chasing applause, the romantic longing to be completed, the spiritual seeker clutching for enlightenment, even the wounded soul identifying with its pain, none of these are your essence. They are masks, garments stitched together by desire and fear. They are the costumes you wear to survive the social theater. And what a quiet, holy relief it is to finally drop the act, to exhale the role, to feel the cool air of reality kiss the face you'd long forgotten underneath the makeup of becoming. And then something astonishing happens. In the midst of the collapse, in the eye of the storm, you begin to laugh. Not a manic laugh, not a cynical one. A laugh of liberation, because suddenly, absurdly, you realize the joke has always been on you. You were never holding it together. It was never you orchestrating this grand performance. Life was living through you. It was breathing, blooming, unraveling, dancing by itself, just like a flower blooms without consulting a manual, just like the ocean waves rise and fall without a committee meeting. You thought you were in control, but you were just a ripple in the tide. And that laugh, it's the sound of illusion dying and freedom being born. Letting go is not giving up. It is not defeat. It is the highest form of courage. It is the decision to trust what you cannot see, to stop demanding certainty and instead sink into mystery. It's not apathy, it's alignment. Letting go means you cease to wrestle with life and begin to dance with it. You stop pretending to be the conductor and you realize you are the symphony. The music is not coming from you, but through you. Every note, every dissonance, every crescendo, it's all part of something larger. When you truly surrender, you don't become less powerful. You become harmonious. You move with the current, not against it. You don't lose control. You realize you never needed it. And in that harmony, you begin to move differently. Life ceases to be a march and becomes a dance, not a stiff, memorized routine, but a fluid, spontaneous jazz improvisation. Your steps become lighter, your reactions slower, more thoughtful. You stop trying to predict the melody and instead respond to it. You feel into the rhythm instead of thinking about it. And that rhythm, that subtle, sacred pulse, it's been there all along, underneath the anxious noise of effort and ambition. It's the heartbeat of the cosmos, inviting you to join the song not as a performer, but as a participant, not as a controller, but as a lover of the moment. Naturally, this is terrifying to the ego. The ego, that ever-chattering gatekeeper of your story, exists to defend the illusion of permanence. It asks in panic, but what if I lose everything? To which I say, yes, what if? What if losing everything is exactly what needs to happen for you to find the one thing that was never subject to loss?